Has there ever been a game more immediately recognizable than Mortal Kombat? For the past 27 years, decades removed from its debut, when you pop a Mortal Kombat game into your system, you already got the general gist of what's going to be going on. Two killers who are probably just palette swaps, whether as pixelated sprites, horrifically modeled CGI catastrophes, or beautifully rendered boy toys, are going to be going head-to-head in a battle to the death, bursting at the seams with creative content, creative, for the most part, characters, for the most part, and of course, there will be a creative climax to the bloodshed. You know you're somewhere along the lines gonna see Liu Kang kick someone, Sub-Zero freeze someone, Scorpion bake a cake, and Sonya be boring but somehow insanely good in every single fucking game. After all, it ain't 1992 anymore, my house isn't a roller rink, and with me being as depraved as I am at this juncture, I'm gonna need a little bit more than a cartwheel to get my rocks off. The story's gonna revolve around our Earthrealm warriors led by Liu Kang, Bootleg Liu Kang, group of smaller, more gender-diverse Liu Kangs, or Raiden, as they attempt to thwart the evil Outworld or Netherrealm regimes from destroying our realm as we know it. Bad guys are always gonna be the cooler characters, like a Ghost Ninja, or a Lizard Ninja, or an E-Boy Ninja, and the gameplay is probably gonna be fluid and addicting. Whether taking the form of a ladder or a ladder filled with cutscenes, the point is, the story will likely play out pretty similarly no matter what. Now, although a lot of those things I just mentioned are integral to the Mortal Kombat experience and thus true for every game, there is one glaring exception for many of them. This is an exception that details a story and gameplay experience so unlike anything we've ever seen in any fighting game ever, let alone the Mortal Kombat franchise. A Mortal Kombat game so unique, so diabolically insane, that we may never experience anything like it ever again. That game is Mortal Kombat Deception. Flashback to 2002. Spider-Man just decided he wanted to exist, Avril Lavigne became a skater boy or something, I don't know, that song was way too deep for me to understand, and you probably had frosted tips. Such is my understanding of the year 2002. The transfer from 2D to 3D for the franchise had been, well, it had been a bit rough, and by a bit rough, I mean it was fucking abysmal. Prior years saw such Shakespearean epics as Mortal Kombat Special Forces and Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero light themselves on fire, while less tragic but still disappointing entities like Mortal Kombat 4 and Mortal Kombat Gold stood in the background covered in kerosene. Things were not looking pretty. There needed to be some form of revitalization because, to put it bluntly, not too many people really gave a damn about Mortal Kombat anymore. People expected an amazing jump to the new era of 3D gaming, but were instead left with disappointment and, well, this. Can I take a run? That one's kind of good. I'll give him that one. But regardless, as the saying goes, the mighty all must eventually fall. Mortal Kombat burst onto the scene in a crimson-cloaked explosion of excitement, adrenaline, and money, but by the end of the 90s, with fans' expectations being sniped by continuous disappointment on brand new, glorious, lifelike hardware, fanfare, and thus profits reached an all-time low. It's at this point, however, that a little game comes along called Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Now, not only did this new Mortal Kombat game contain cutting-edge 3D graphics, but it also included a whole new cast of characters, 3 whole fighting stances, and a totally rad new metal theme song. Within 6 weeks, the sheer, unadulterated power of Scorpion dancing to Edema led to the game selling 1 million units, eventually accumulating 3.5 million units sold and receiving the best reviews the franchise had ever seen since Mortal Kombat 2. Does the game hold up now? Well, I think it's best we don't get into that, both for my mental stability and my physical welfare, but what matters is that the game was a smash success for the time. Among the many innovations that this game brought to the table was most notably Conquest Mode, spelled with a K because Ed Boon personally hates me. Conquest Mode served as essentially the story mode for the game, expanding upon the lore detailed in the opening cinematic and contextualizing many of the new characters introduced. Sounds great in concept, but in practice, the mode served to be little more than a fucking tutorial. That's it. The game mode is just a practice mode for each character. I kid you not, Discovering this when I was younger led to me forming a personal vendetta against this game and rarely ever touching it again. It might seem a little bit harsh, but you gotta keep in mind that Conquest Mode really had nothing else to offer beyond text-based lore and tutorial missions, which is a far cry from the big swanky story modes that we're getting today. You also must keep in mind that as a small child, I had the attention span of a frog addicted to methamphetamines, and thus, text-based dialogue and a determined lack of spine rips or jiggle physics landed about as softly as a right hand from Buster Douglas in Tokyo, Japan. After the franchise revival that began to occur with Deadly Alliance, NetherRealm Studios, then Midway, realized that they needed to think bigger than before, badder than before. Well, actually that's not really that possible, but definitely better than before. Enter Mortal Kombat Deception. Now, Deception marks the midway point of the 3D era, coming up before the penultimate asset dump known as Armageddon. Deception took the concepts brought forward in Deadly Alliance and basically, to put it short, improved literally every single one of them. For starters, the gameplay, which is essentially the crux of the experience, was immediately known to be more fluid and refined than it was in Deadly Alliance. Sure, you couldn't stab people like you used to be able to, but you could finally interact with stages. A match could end at any point due to a stage fatality, something that arenas such as the Falling Cliffs took complete advantage of. The 3 fighting style form of combat also returned, as did many fan-favorite characters such as Baraka, Melina, and Kenshi. Also, we gotta take a moment to appreciate these stages. Starting out, we got the Beetle Lair. Oh hell yeah, you're fighting, you're swinging, and what's that beneath your feet? It's a beetle. It's a lot of beetles. So naturally you freak out, you start screaming, you try to run away, and without looking, you crash into the big red gem thing in the middle of the map. And boom, now you have a door. 10 out of 10, great map. Another underrated gem that I feel like I have to mention is the Chamber of Artifacts. Yeah, that's right, I'm digging deep for this one. Now, this arena, I know nothing about. But look at it, it's goddamn beautiful. I mean, the colors, the orange, the fact that it's all made of glass. I don't know. I've always loved it. It's pretty snazzy. I'll give that thing an 8.3 out of 10 right there. Oh, the Dark Prison. Could not have thought of a more fitting name myself, although Shang Tsung's Kink Dungeon does come to mind. I always thought this map was cool for a few reasons. Number 1, the big spiky compressor thing, which in the story was used to throw prisoners in for the amusement of the guards, but in real life was used to beat Jared and then get him really bad and angry. Number 2, the lore, because it's just Shang Tsung's prison and the prisoners really did nothing wrong. Shang Tsung's just an asshole and likes to kill them, whether through the aforementioned spiky compressor thing, or making them fight in the courtyard against highly skilled combatants. Loser serves Shang for all eternity, whatever that means. Finally, and most importantly, this map was awesome because, aside from the spiky compressor thing, the prison cells were occupied exclusively with Mortal Kombat characters that didn't make the cut for the roster. That's right, I'm talking Sector, Nitara, Kai, Shinnok somehow, you know, characters that we hadn't seen in a minute. This is a 10 out of 10. Alright, we got the Falling Cliffs. Now this, another absolute classic, a personal favorite of mine, being the equivalent of a pit fight or a lumberjack match with the entire arena falling apart as you play it, making you and your opponent get closer with every passing second. You stand too close to the edge? Oh brother, I got a surprise for you and it rhymes with bawling to your Beth. Naturally, I've attempted to recreate this stage for every date I've ever been on, and so far the success rate is actually not that bad, but, you know, such is life. I'd argue that it's the most unique map in Mortal Kombat history, and it contains a concept that, although devastating to any semblance of real competition, I wish would be brought back. 5 out of 10. Now, most importantly, how could we forget Yin Yang Island, the greatest arena in Mortal Kombat history? I mean, just listen to that beautiful soundtrack. Magnificent. I mean, half the match, beautiful beach vacation. Nothing to see here. You got your sand, you got your trees, your boats, you're sipping mojitos, enjoying the view with your pal, and then boom. What's that? Lightning? Waves? Piranhas? Snakes? You gotta love it. If I could lay a tender kiss on the lips of this map, or at least the very gifted soul who constructed it, I'd be able to die a happy man. 8 out of 10. Now, these maps, beyond the risks that they took with their death traps and unorthodox design choices, are something special because each of them represents a unique chunk of the lore. Each map works toward building an immersive world, which is something that we unfortunately seldom see to this extent today. I mean, let's just do a quick comparison. Take Mortal Kombat 11, the most recent game in the franchise. I'll pick a random map, say Special Forces Desert Command. Now, the story behind this map is that it's a Special Forces outpost in the desert, and as we see in the story, the Lin Kuei attacks it. Okay, and that's it. Alright, so how about Tarkatan War Camp? That's a pretty cool one. It seems pretty interesting. It's a unique species that we don't see too much. It's a war camp for the Tarkatan race, and it shows up in the story, and it's where Baraka lives. It's his pimp pad, basically. Once again, that's it. Okay, last one. Now this one's a banger. Shaolin Trap Dungeon. Come on, with a name like that, can't steer me wrong. Alright, so it's a dungeon owned by the Shaolin that hosts a plethora of traps and defense mechanisms for the warriors. And that's it. Now, these arenas, as I just stated, do actually have lore behind them. I mean, I just said what the lore was, and they do technically contribute to the universe around them, and this isn't to say that these are even bad arenas at all, in fact, far from it, but let's just compare the lore surrounding them to some of the Deception arenas. At random, let's start with a stage that I didn't mention, the Nether ship interior. Gameplay-wise, it's just a stage in a creepy boat, but in the story, the Nether ship is a vessel that is used to carry prisoners or otherwise unlucky souls back to Shang Tsung's palace out in Outworld, and thus, it can travel the realms. The ship was also used to transport the Dragon King Onaga's mummified remains prior to his resurrection, Onaga of course being the final boss of the game. In the arena, we see the swinging corpses of captives who were either executed or who took the easy way out, knowing of the unending horrors that lie ahead. Either way, all who travel within the Nether ship will eventually meet the same fate, an eternal service to Shang Tsung. When not being occupied by prisoners, the ship was also used to transport invited combatants to Shang Tsung's island for the original Mortal Kombat tournaments. See, the lore to this arena not only connects to the story of Deception, but it also connects to another map, that being the Dark Prison, and it connects to games of the past, assisting in mapping out the entire MK universe and subsequently constructing a cohesive story. Alright, I'll go one more because I said so. Let's go with the Slaughterhouse, a rare Netherrealm stage that isn't just a fiery pit called Hell. Now, Slaughterhouse is a building located within the city of Necros, residing within the first plane of the Netherrealm. The building is rumored to contain an unseen, unknown evil whose presence is constant. Humans and animals alike are continually fed through grinders that produce a stream of blood throughout the arena. The first part of the stage takes place on the upper level, with the second part dropping combatants down to a mill where a death trap lies. Should one victim fall to this trap, they'll get the Augustus Gloop treatment, being yet another body contributing to the deep red river. See the difference? Now, the new maps are stunning. They're brilliant. I mean, they're just amazing to look at, but they don't really have much world building behind them. Sure, there are exceptions, just like with anything, but in Deception, these sorts of stages weren't the exception, they were the norm. Every match had a story behind it, and every fight felt a little bit more epic because of it. Your battles with friends weren't just taking place over a scenic backdrop, you had a different feel for every fight, a different consequence, a different meaning, a far cry from the interchangeability we see among stages today. Let's be real though. The thing that makes Mortal Kombat Deception far ahead of its time, the thing that makes it worth returning to, the thing that makes it the most unique fighting game of all time is not the arenas, it's the side content. Just about every AAA fighting game nowadays has taken notes from the content-packed Mortal Kombat franchise with its challenge towers and Crypt adventures, but none have even come close to replicating what Deception accomplished. Starting with the mini-games, why do literally any of these exist? No, seriously. What Ted Bundy-esque psychopath over at Midway decided, yeah, you know what? We should put chess in our next fighting game. Assumedly due to one too many late-night benders and just enough ramping cocaine binges, we got just that. Chess Combat, a wonderful reimagining of the timeless tabletop game, allows you to build a team of characters, each being selected for different responsibilities, whether it be spellcasting, fighting, aptitude, or cannon fodder, to take down all who stand in your way. The mode, for the most part, operated like your standard game of chess, of course with a few twists. First of all, much like real chess, at the click of a button, you'd have a list of spells that can be cast to attack or defend. These spells range from granting you the ability to revive one of your fallen pieces to just straight up imprisoning one of your opponents, and everything in between. So we're playing with house rules, basically. Second of all, taking down enemy pieces isn't as simple as merely knocking someone off their spot. No, this is Mortal Kombat we're talking about, so obviously it results in a fight to the death, with winner taking all. Each type of piece has a different health bar, and thus there are definite advantages for different strategies depending on who your best characters are. Much like real chess, the winner is decided also in a fatal duel between the king and an attacker, and once the king is defeated, once again much like real chess, he is brutally murdered by a flamboyantly dressed assailant. Sure does take you back to the peaceful days at the park with Peepaw. Memories. Now, if you thought things couldn't get any stranger, well, buckle up, because following chess combat we have, that's right, you guessed it, puzzle combat. Now, to put it simply, puzzle combat is just Dr. Mario if Dr. Mario was a sadomasochist who took the Saw movies a little bit too seriously. Much like chess combat, the loser of puzzle combat is dispatched of in a quick, cleanly fashion, but unlike chess combat, playing this mode alone leads to a puzzle combat ladder of increasing difficulty. Once again, this begs the question, why does this mode exist? But I mean, who am I to judge? It's original, and we really have not seen anything like it before or since. So, now that we got the two mini-games out of the way, it's time to get into the real gabagook of this game, Conquest Mode. Now, Conquest Mode in Mortal Kombat Deception is not your grandfather's standard tutorial. Oh no, this is a complete open-world sandbox. That's right, settle down, settle down. It's an open-world Mortal Kombat game. Conquest Mode allows the player to wander around, traverse the realms, complete side quests, and talk to charming townsfolk who had arguably the greatest voice acting of all time.
Hello there. You look about the same age as my grandson. I think you can learn a lot from him about the benefits of meditation.
I am in so much trouble. I cannot believe that I pawned my wedding ring to pay my debts. Now my wife will not talk to me. I do not have enough money to buy it back from the merchant to whom I sold it. But if someone could get my ring back for me, I would gladly reward him with what money I have left.
And you did all of this interacting and side questing and scavenging under the tutelage of an elder god. A big, green, scaly elder god, but once again, who am I to judge? The sky was really the limit here. You could traverse to Outworld and find Reiko meandering about on the streets, complete tasks for dastardly demons within the Netherrealm, speak to strange people experimenting with mushrooms in Florida, and just straight up burglarize people in Earthrealm. Yeah, that's right. If you're a cool guy, if you're an original gangster, if you're a wise guy, you can just walk into a random house, maybe punch a dude in the face, and then go home with a big shiny coin for your troubles. Now, if you live in Brockton, you're probably used to this concept already, but for the rest of us, this was pretty cool. Now, if you're anything like me, you played this story mode by simply walking around the first area, punching people in the face for hours, getting punched in the face for hours, and overall doing literally everything other than what the story demanded. I couldn't even be damned to do a side quest. I would literally just walk up to people and punch them in the face. Now, if you had common sense and basic human decency, you were instead able to experience the true glories of this mode and, make it out of the first area. The only real downside was that a lot of the time the game would revert back to its tutorial roots, which is especially tedious in the beginning stages before you know the wonders that lie ahead. As previously stated, however, those who trudge past the monotony and, the Boraicho were gifted a Mortal Kombat experience that we would never see again. Or at least, not to this extent. In the years that followed the brilliance of Mortal Kombat Deception's Conquest Mode, open-world elements would be experimented with, but none would really be fully utilized. The Mortal Kombat Armageddon Conquest Mode was insanely unique for a fighting game, acting as more of an action game than a fighter, with sprawling levels to traverse through and enemies to hack and slash through. The only issue is that these were just that, levels. The gameplay was linear and followed one path and stayed in one region per level. Following Armageddon, we got Mortal Kombat vs. DC, which didn't just degrade the new formula, but slaughtered it along with its entire family, containing absolutely none of these commendable elements, and then we get to the modern games. Mortal Kombat 9 was really the first step in teasing open-world gameplay since Armageddon, and this was done in a formerly somewhat neglected aspect of the games, the Crypt. The mode is basically an unlockathon, and although Mortal Kombat 9's Crypt forces you to follow a relatively linear path and there isn't much in the vein of exploration, you are technically allowed to roam free, albeit within an allotted zone. Mortal Kombat X took this idea of a free-roaming Crypt, gave it power armor, and then sent it right out into our frothing mouths. Mortal Kombat X's Crypt furthered this idea of an open-world adventure mode far more than Mortal Kombat 9 did. Much like Deception, there were different zones that could be unlocked with progress, artifacts to collect, puzzles to complete, and overall an unprecedented sense of freedom. Of course, Deception followed a narrative, had a main character, and, was an actual game mode and not just a method of unlocking add-ons, but with this in-depth expansion, and knowing that Mortal Kombat doesn't normally remain stagnant with their gameplay innovations, the question remained, what would be next for Mortal Kombat 11? Come the launch of MK11, these questions were put to rest with by far the most expansive, non-linear, sandbox-esque version of the Crypt to date. In this installment, we actually see our character in third person. It takes place from a third-person perspective. We get a hammer, which, that's big. We further delve into the lore, and we get to see all of our characters be confirmed dead. And, most importantly, and don't you forget it, we get to spend our hard-earned coins, or if you're useless, your hard-earned cash on loot boxes. Yep, so this is the point in the video where I mentioned how despite taking a massive leap forward in terms of gameplay innovation for the Crypt, MK11 also took a massive, catastrophic step downward with its loot crate systems. That's not the purpose of mentioning it, and that's a different, terrible story for a different, terrible time, so let's just move on. Now, as we can see, with every passing title, Mortal Kombat has danced closer and closer to the precedent created in Mortal Kombat Deception, though it never has truly reached it. Although this appears to be a beacon of hope, the reality is a bit more bleak than that. Looking at each Mortal Kombat game since MK Deception, every passing title has included less extra, unique content and relied more on towers and standard fighting game material, along with microtransactions. We don't really see Mortal Kombat taking these risks aside from the Crypt, a game mode that they completely botched in Mortal Kombat 11, which makes you think that they're going to downgrade it again for Mortal Kombat 12. Sticking to the topic of Mortal Kombat 11, let me be clear. MK11 is clearly a great game. Visually, it's a masterpiece. Gameplay-wise, it's as fluid, strategic, and brutal as the game has ever been. Story-wise, let's not get into that. But when it comes to the actual things to do in the game, you really only have two options. An RNG Crypt filled with mostly useless, charmed void loot, or standard combat, because really, when you boil down the towers, online play, and ladders, that's really all that it is. Take a look at Mortal Kombat 9, a game that came out somehow nearly a decade ago. The game had a massive challenge tower. It had test your might, test your sight, test your luck, test yourself because you got that anonymous text, all to go along with the Crypt, the linear story, and the combat. Go back even further to Armageddon. You have an action-adventure story, a kart racing game, and a create a character, all to go along with its Crypt and its combat. And then before that, we have the crown jewel of the 3D era, Mortal Kombat Deception, which, as we've discussed today, remains the absolute bar for story modes in fighting games and has yet to be reached in terms of minigames and bonus content. For as much shit as I give the 3D era, and boy do I, the Mortal Kombat Deception game stands out from the pack for a variety of reasons. The games of today, despite easily being better and more fluid gameplay-wise, are devoid of the charm and extra content that this game packed. If anything, this video is a plea for Mortal Kombat to look back at its past beyond just to dish out some more nostalgia DLC, and to take note of some of the brilliant ideas that it's left in the dust. Now, luckily it appears that NetherRealm is on the right track with the Aftermath DLC that's coming out having a lot of free content, and one of those pieces of free content being Friendships, which is a piece of this unique era of Mortal Kombat, well, not specifically the 3D era, but the past of Mortal Kombat that seemingly had been left to die in the dust. Hopefully with this Aftermath DLC, it'll be the beginning of Mortal Kombat taking risks again, because this is something that we haven't seen many fighting games do. Maybe I'm just being optimistic, maybe I'm naive and stupidly hopeful, but we can all dream. Regardless, hopefully you've enjoyed taking a wonderful bloodstained jaunt down memory lane with me. And if you did enjoy and want to help out a completely broke college student, stick around for more content if I, ever decide to upload consistently. As always, my name is Tyler. I hope to see you again soon, and I am out.